in an interview on CNN last night, former New Jersey governor and 2024 hopeful Chris Christie criticized Donald Trump in the wake of this week's leaked audio tape and offered his own theories about why the former president kept classified documents after leaving office.
I mean, the thing that struck me the most was that is what Donald Trump is like most of the time, constantly rationalizing his own bad behavior, justifying what he's doing at the very moment that he's doing it, even when he knows it's wrong, and showing off. He's the consummate show-off. And I think that's what that tape was, him showing off. People ask me, going all the way back to the time of the raid last year of Mar-a-Lago, like, why would he keep these documents? People are like, is he going to give them to a foreign government or sell them to somebody or blackmail people? Like, you don't understand Donald Trump. It's just to show off. He wants to continue to act like he's president. He can't live with the fact that he's not. And so that's why he kept those documents. It seems childish and stupid, and it is, but that's the reason why, in my view, he's always kept them.
Why do you think his excuses keep changing for why he had those documents?
Because he's getting cornered. He's getting cornered, and he'll lie about anything. I think the latest lie is the one that he said just yesterday, right, where he said, I wasn't really showing them anything. It was just bravado.
Bravado.
He was essentially saying he was lying to the people he was sitting with. He was cornered by the Bret Baier interview. The Bret Baier interview put him in a horrible box that I don't think he's ever going to be able to get out of.
Where he said it wasn't a document per se.
Well, that, but he also, the bigger problem he has, Caitlin, is that he admitted he had the documents. He knew about the grand jury subpoena, but he was too busy to go through the boxes to see what was classified and what wasn't. And he didn't want to just turn the boxes over because he had golf shirts and golf pants in there. I mean, come on. There's nobody in America who believes that story.
So Chris Christie, like a lot of us, has had direct time closely working with Donald Trump and brings us into his mindset there. And I'd like to add, having watched him closely as well at times and having had known him, the possibility that he and his team released the audio. There's always that, and I'll tell you why. Jonathan Lemire, it's part of his process of desensitizing the public to something that is shocking. This is something Donald Trump does well and then festers on the anger of it to play in the court of public opinion, which, of course, is important because he's running for president. And when you're running for the presidency and you have indictments coming at you, the only way you can get out of jail is to be president. So in a way, he's running for his get out of jail free card. And you see him, as Chris Christie said, constantly rationalizing things, lying about them. He does show off. He's right. There's a lot of bravado there. I remember early on in his presidency, in the first weeks, we were in the Oval Office and he kept saying, have you been in the Oval Office before? Have you ever seen the Oval Office before? Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Loves to show off, obsesses over his power. So in many ways, while he plays in the court of public opinion, what I don't think he understands is that in the court of law, they don't really care what people think. They're using these facts to build a case.
Yeah, his only hope there would be simply the idea of jury nullification, that there's just some one juror who's just going to be a secret Trump holdout and simply wouldn't vote to convict. But you're right, it's a very different game once you're inside that courtroom versus what he's used to, which is in the political sphere. And Mika, I had a similar experience. I've told this story before on the show. I was in the Oval Office for an interview a couple years into his presidency, and he suddenly whipped out, using the same idea of like, hey, this is off the record, don't tell anybody, and suddenly pulled out a classified document, a letter that he had received from Kim Jong-un. He does love to show off, stress how important he is, and wants to impress whoever he's with, whoever that might be. But Jen Palmieri, we just heard from Chris Christie there, being sharply critical, doing some straight talk express, if you will, like calling it like he sees it in terms of Trump and his excuses, nonsensical excuses about those classified documents. But Christie is pretty much a lone voice right now among the Republican field. And to Mika's point, has been utterly drowned out why Trump is shaping this issue. And whether Trump was behind the audio leak or not, he's certainly gotten ahead of the story, and he's talking about it and painting it further as part of this witch hunt that's made to bring him down. Do you see any scenario where Donald Trump doesn't win that competition against the likes of Chris Christie in shaping the narrative for Republican voters?
Well, I'm surprised, honestly, at how, Chris Christie's at 5%. That is not very high, but I'm pretty sure that's higher than he ever was in 2016. And he is, in that class of people that's in single digits, he's doing better than others. That's a low bar, but that is striking to me that, because, there is a population of Republican primary voters that feel the same way Christie does, that do want Donald Trump to be held accountable, and they do want to move on from him. So it is striking to me that Christie's getting as much attention as he is, and that his support is growing. He is not going to be the Republican nominee or anything close to it. I suspect people like DeSantis are thinking, great, let Chris Christie beat up on Donald Trump so I don't have to. Let him make all these arguments about why Trump is vulnerable as a general election candidate, so I don't have to. But I think that's a really risky strategy, as you see, when Caddy was going over all the ways that these indictments, every indictment that comes down, the less any individual one might matter, right? The pile up may not hurt him as we expected it could. And so I think that people like DeSantis are taking a big risk by not pointing out in real time Trump's vulnerabilities as it's related to the indictments, because he could just get a head of steam that is insurmountable.
Rev, I don't know about you, but Trump's never waved any classified documents around in front of me. I'm feeling left out here. Just showed me like signed footballs from Doug Flutie and stuff like that. But Rev, as we were watching Chris Christie make a very obvious case of what's going on here, because he knows Donald Trump and he's speaking truth. But he is a lonely man in this race. He's a very lonely man. And are we foolish every time one of these indictments come down, every time there's some bad news for Donald Trump, somebody will come on and say, well, maybe this is the moment. This is the exit ramp. This is a chance for people to break with Donald Trump. After 8 years of observing him as a presidential candidate and as president, shouldn't we know by now it's just not going to change the trajectory of his ascent again, perhaps, to become the nominee?
No, we should know by now that it's not going to change his hardcore following. We can hope and pray that some of the more reasonable Republicans would change, but it seems like they're going along with it. And I've known Donald Trump 35 years, mostly fighting him, but at times he would try to be a Democrat and try to prove himself to be liberal. And he's never showed me any papers. I refused to meet with him, even though he called me twice when he was president, but I've met with him many times before. And if you meet with him at Trump Towers, he's always showing something to validate himself. You're dealing with a man with deep insecurities that surrounds himself with phony cover stories of himself in his own office. I mean, who does that? He makes up phony front covers. So if you need that kind of validation, of course you'll need to validate to somebody. I really have power. I really was president. Look at these classified documents. You've got to psychoanalyze a man who is deeply insecure, that overplays it, and he plays into other people's insecurities that they no longer matter. America's getting away from us, so we're going to make America great. I'm going to save you and they're after us. They're after us. When they're after me, they're after you. That's what's keeping his core in. He's playing on the insecurity of Americans that have been wrongfully feeling displaced. And that is a sad commentary, but that's where we are.